Okay, thanks, Jesse. Welcome everybody to a snowy February 20th Caroline Town Board meeting. And preceding the board meeting will be a public hearing, and I'll start the whole thing with a pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America,
Yeah.
the republic
for
for which
it stands,
one nation,
one nation under God, indivisible.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Thank you. We didn't really have a choir tonight. So with that, we are opening the meeting with a public hearing on a revised Caroline tax exemption local law. And Jay Franklin provided us information on some adjustments that the county made, and we pretty much followed those. One was to increase the senior disabled 50% exemption limit to 36,500 from 35,000. The second was to modify veterans exemptions in line with the county's increases. And the third was to remove the 10-year limit for Cold War veterans exemption for veterans remaining in their homes, which prior to 2017 was a limit set by the state. So Jay Franklin provided us an exemption impact analysis, which was an estimate of the impact on the taxes of residents as a result of these exemptions. So if you pass an exemption for some people, then the tax levy is distributed to the remainder of the tax base. And so his calculation suggested an 85-cent increase for the senior disabled change for the town of Caroline, and a $1.07 increase for the veterans exemptions. So I just wanted to provide that, and then so I'll open the public hearing now for anyone that wishes to speak to this change in our exemptions. And there's nobody here at the town hall. And I don't see anyone online with a hand raised. So I will close the public hearing on the Caroline tax exemption local law, and we will be considering adopting that later in the meeting. So the public hearing is now closed, and I'll open the business meeting. So without further ado, I will proceed with the supervisor's report. And correspondence of note, we received a notice from the New York State DEC, lead agency notice, notifying us that they are intending to serve as a lead agency for state environmental review for a mined land reclamation permit change to the existing 65-acre life of mine permit, to increase that by 2 acres. This is, I didn't put it in my notes, but this is the Robinson Sand and Gravel Pit in the town of Caroline. It's under a permit from the DEC. And the letter asks that the town agree with their determination, which I definitely do agree with that, as the DEC is the appropriate agency for environmental review. So any thoughts or comments on that? Does that seem? So we either don't reply, and there's a 30-day window where we can reply. If we don't reply, they assume that's approval of their lead agency. Or I can write them a letter letting them know our determination or our agreement or disagreement.
Which would be the polite thing to do.
It would be the polite thing, so I would like to do that, yeah.
Question is did they buy like a residential home next door or something, or is it land that they already had?
It's land they already had. It's not I think it's expansion of the permit for land they already own.
This company bought this mine from the previous owner about 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah, I know the current owner,
Yeah, and
but I don't
so
know what they're planning.
I think just,
I think it's
So-
200%.
This would be okaying the DEC to do the environmental review. Do we
That's
get
right.
a say in it at some point? Like, what they're
they're requesting that they serve as the lead agency for environmental review.
okay, and they make an environmental review, but what I'm asking is, do we give up any authority about the review on it? And I mean, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be the right ones. I just don't understand what authority that is, like.
It's the same
what's
authority that
acres.
it's the same
Sorry?
authority, Kate, that we've asked for when we've recommended lead agency for our
Mhm.
seeker process for like the
Okay.
zoning law or whatever.
Mhm.
Their letter is on the abstracts table there, and they explain that as the state agency responsible for the environment, that they feel that they're the proper agency to review this project. So
Okay. Oh, I agree with them. I think they are the proper, I mean, last year I called and talked to the people at the mine, and they invited us as the town board to come tour their site and see how it works. I was impressed with the closed water system they had and plans set up.
so you did a visit.
That I didn't do a visit, and I meant to, and then they closed down for the winter again. It's just the time got away, but maybe we could do that at some point this spring, just to see what they were doing. They were very welcoming on it, and wanted us to see the work they were doing. So
And as I recall, their land abuts up against our land down there as well.
Yeah, I
I
think so.
think.
Yeah, the town's land.
Yeah,
What
Right.
land does the town own?
About 6 acres, right next to the gravel pit along Perkins Road. If you're driving away from Brookdale, it's on the left side.
it used to be used by the town for mining, for materials.
It's one of the
we
sites.
considered it for a place to put the town barns.
Yeah. Okay, well, I just wanted to make you aware of that. And so I think the postmark on the letter was it was early February. So if you have any thoughts about this beyond what we've talked about tonight, then let me know. We should. I did, so in about a month ago, the DEC sent a request with model law with a lot of our information inputted for a revision of our flood damage prevention local law. And the main change was to insert the information, the geographical information for the new floodplain maps from FEMA. So this is, so we did this a couple years ago. We updated this. You may remember the flood damage prevention local law. And we did that Guy pretty much drafted the whole thing from the state recommendations or template, and so this is very similar to that. And they wanted to one of the town, so on June 18th, the new FEMA flood maps become the official maps. So we're supposed to have this local law revised and enacted by that point. So they asked by March 20th if we would send them a draft for approval. And then we have to go through the adoption process, which will take a little time. I've scheduled a community update meeting with Egg Geothermal on the Speedsville Thermal Network Project for next Tuesday, February 25th at the Speedsville Community Center, and by town Zoom. That'll be at 7 p.m. So that'll be good. They've done one study, which I believe is called a scoping study, and as I understand it, they will, to proceed, we need to do like an engineering study and design study, so which will require funding. So if you can attend that, that would be great. We'll put out a town announcement and make sure get the word out. The RFP, the request for proposals for the Old Town Hall restoration project, was released on February 3rd. The previous site visit was scheduled for today. Susan and Steve Gibeon and I, we decided to postpone it a week because of today's cold weather. We did have one person come anyway who can't be there next week and was coming through anyway today. So she took a look at the town hall and had a nice look at it. I met with Bob today, Superintendent Spencer, and he has requested, given the, I guess, deliberations over the Cargill salt mine, that we consider it kind of begs a discussion of what we might do if there was no Cargill salt or alternatives to the Cargill site. So I'm totally on board with that. I think that would be good.
So, I mean, does this mean that he will, as highway superintendent, provide us with options and alternatives?
Yeah, I think it'd be good to invite that.
Asking for.
Yeah.
And this certainly isn't imminent. You know, what's being requested at the county level is simply basically a safety review.
Right.
And that doesn't necessarily imply anything at all. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. I know there have been discussions independent of this issue in the past about are there ways that we could reduce salt application to the roads. So I think that's a good discussion myself. Tim and I attended the Association of Towns meetings this past week. The sessions that I went to were on speed limit reduction. Session that was titled something like planning that prioritizes people, not cars. Collective bargaining, rural ambulance, emergency incident command or emergency declarations. And so there were several sessions where there was a lot of conversation about solar and agrivoltaics. So apparently NYSERDA is considering, there was a NYSERDA rep at the final session where this was discussed, and apparently they're considering providing language in the templates for agrivoltaics, so. Be interesting to see what comes out of that, but.
And I went to additional sessions on special use permits, which was interesting. And didn't you go to that? You were there
I
at the
came in,
tail end,
yeah, a little bit, yeah.
And then I went to
That
one
was-
on code enforcement, and that was dismal and awful. They spent the first 20 minutes showing slides of fire disasters over the past 100 years
So
to try to convince a room full of code enforcement officers
it's worthwhile.
that it's worthwhile. And the second exit in the room that was full of code enforcement people was blocked. It's like, so there's only one exit out of the room.
Did somebody point that out?
Yes. Many times.
Yeah, that's good. So that's my report. The other thing that I'll just note, you'll notice, you know, we're paying about $360,000 in A-fund bills. There's a lot of money that we're paying for engineering and permits for the broadband project. So that's moving. Great. Any other thoughts or questions before I move on?
Mark, did you want to report on the planning board? Or is that, just let me know.
Okay. I'll how about it at the end of the reports? Great. Thanks, Michelle. Jesse, do you want to offer your report?
Sure. I'll just go through the list of the January revenues collected. We sold one fishing license. There were 43 dog renewal licenses and 3 building permits. Total revenue, local revenue was $963.28. And I submitted that to Mark on the 13th of this month. And I just wanted to give a brief update on the tax collection. So I met the town warrant the beginning of this month. So payments that come in from now on get sent directly to Tompkins County. To date, total collected amount is just over $2.9 million. 113 payments were made online, which was significantly down from last year, about 200, almost 200 payments less. 355 people came into the town hall to pay, and the rest were made by mail. And that's my report for January.
Thanks, Jesse. Do you have any thoughts about the change in online payments?
I think it's something to do with the surcharge fee. The surcharge fees are significant, and I think people that did it in the past are now seeing that, you know, those charges can be hefty. I mean, depending on the amount of your bill, the fees are significant. So I think people are just paying attention to that. I tried to put out, you know, this year in the last newsletter that went out in December that people that pay online don't have to pay by credit card. You can pay by e-check, and it's only a couple of dollars fee. I don't know how many people paid that, but it could also be because I had so many more people come through the office, and that just could be as a result of, you know, there's the less restrictions now because COVID. So it's hard to say exactly, but I think there's several factors there. So
that's interesting about the e-check they can do for just a nominal fee, right?
Right. That's right. So I'll try to give maybe a little, you know, I'll try to put it maybe in the last couple of newsletters just so that, you know, give people the heads up. Maybe they'll remember that they have the option to do that. So
Great. Great. Very good. Thank you. Let's see. I reported from my conversation a little bit with Bob today. And Bob Ray, our code officer, he's working on, he provided sort of a preliminary report to me and Tim, I guess. So he's sort of working on that. So that's coming along. I think he'll have something for us next month. And so Dan, do you have anything to talk to us about?
Yes, hello. I do have a short report for you tonight. So I mentioned last month that the sales tax revenue for 2024 was not looking great, and we did finish out the year and get the final results. We had a very good December, but it wasn't enough to, well, maybe I'll say put it in positive territory. So there's a formula that divides the sales tax to the city, to the county, and to the towns. The towns portion for 2024 will decrease by 1.1% from what it was in 2023. So a year-over-year decrease in sales tax revenue, that's very unusual. It hasn't happened in a long time. The county did slightly better. We came in at 0.5% more than we did in 2023, but that's still not very much, and it's still below what we had budgeted. The other item I wanted to report on is that we passed a resolution concerning our Industrial Development Agency, the IDA. This is the agency that hears requests from businesses, usually at the construction phase, to abate some of the taxes. That's the major thing that they do and that we hear about. So what we did, our resolution was to ask New York State to allow us to increase the number of seats on the Industrial Development Agency from 7 to 9. And if they do that, and if we get those 2 extra seats, we will then go through a process of deciding what we want to do with those 2 seats, if we want to make them at-large seats or attach a certain category to them. So for instance, we have 1 seat already that's designated for a member of labor. So we've got a union rep on there. The 2 things that I've heard talked about for these other seats as possibilities, one is that it would be a school district representative, and then another idea that's being floated is that it would be a representative of the rural towns. So again, I don't know if that's all going to play out, but if that's something you're interested in, keep an eye on that process and let me know what your thoughts are about that. And that is my report.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Any follow-ups or questions for Dan?
Yeah, Dan, so this has come up here recently because we have a solar project in the works, and our understanding is that they were planning on going to the IDA for an exemption.
For the pilot.
For the pilot. And this is all kind of confused right now, but I would see this as a positive move to have broader representation on the IDA with something like this in mind.
Great.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I don't see any downside. There was some discussion at TCOG. Maybe, were you there for that meting, Dan?
Yes, I was.
And I think the discussion, it's just because it came onto the agenda late, so it kind of, that made it impossible to really move on it at that meeting. But I think there was interest, but people did ask questions like, oh, well, if it's how will we determine who fills that seat and all, but I don't see that as a prohibitive hurdle at all. It could be rotating or whatever, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, there's actually someone with the name of Renee Farrow that has her hand up. I don't know, Renee,
We never did privilege of the floor.
Oh, maybe that's what she wants to do.
Yeah.
So, Renee, did you want to insert a question?
No,
or-
I think one of my grandchildren must have pressed a button. Sorry.
That's okay. Great. I think the hand is pretty cool, actually, but any other questions for Dan about that? No. Great, thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Oh, so Michelle, did you want to give a committee or update on the planning board?
Well, just they met last night and just regarding these, it's the flood damage protection law, right? That you have that you've got from FEMA. The
Yeah.
I think they would still like to do something that would protect water quality during a storm or during a flood. And Nan had suggested that it be made part of the zoning law. So they want to work on protections. They're not sure if it should be a standalone law or if it should be part of zoning. And when they get to that point, they said they would be looking to the town board for guidance.
Okay, so at this point, they're doing more research. Is that the idea?
Or at this point, they're still working on the mobile home law.
Okay,
So
great.
that's turned out to be a little more complex than I think was expected. So they're still doing research on different laws and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So that's basically what they're working on right now. But in the future, if they'd work on the flood damage, they would like to have protections for water quality, which I think are not in the FEMA law.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that sounds good. I I kind of asked, I believe the D's version that I submitted the revision to, I kind of asked him that I said, well, we have this riparian buffer provision in our zoning law. I said, does that impinge or would that affect how, language in the flood damage law, or could it? So I'm hoping he didn't reply right away, but his original letter said, please reach out with any questions. So I think some of these questions, I see the flood damage law as it's to comply with the FEMA requirements to
Yeah.
provide your residents flood insurance in the appropriate zone. So my assumption was, and the reason I sort of went through the boilerplate and submitted it was that that it's basically like a required document to comply. So
Yeah. Well, that's why these additional requirements or whatever, they would be separate and it could either be part of zoning or.
okay. So the other thing that comes to mind is that, and I think Bill is aware of this, and it may or may not be related to this, but there was a committee, an Aquifer Protection Committee, a while back. I believe, Irene Weiser chaired that committee. And they worked with Stephen Winkley at the state, at the organization that helps communities draft aquifer protection laws. So there may be some information or, there may be some information there that would be useful. I don't know. I'll look around and see.
Yeah. I think Bill has talked to Nan, and Nan is always in favor of having things part of the zoning law. But
Okay.
anyway, he also talked a little bit about the changes in some of the wetlands.
Oh, the new changes?
Yeah, and then also, and of course, this doesn't really, I think this is just information, that they're not going to require or rely on maps. They're going to rely on remote satellite sensing for So like the maps are obsolete, but they'll create new, if somebody has a question about an area, they would use remote satellite sensing to determine what those.
Oh, satellite sensing and not ground truthing?
No,
Interesting. Because I thought I remembered during the zoning that Nan explained that the determination of wetland boundaries would be made by actual.
yeah, but I think this is something new requirements, and that also the amount that DEC controls is shrinking from, I don't know, 2.4% to 1.7%. So there are changes at DEC regarding wetlands.
Huh, interesting. I think there are some webinars or something. Did I?
We just got it today.
Okay.
I'm just looking at it.
Okay. So there is some information out there.
Yeah, there's a webinar on Thursday, February 27th at noon. That is for navigating the new freshwater wetlands regulations. But it's just an hour, so it can't be very detailed.
Okay. That'll be the hour before the town hall.
And this does say discussion of the transition from regulatory maps to informational maps, explaining the necessity for this change and its impact on planning and development. So that must be what you're referring to.
Yeah.
Michelle.
Yeah.
It sounds worthwhile to understand it. Yeah. Great. Thanks, Michelle.
Okay.
Any other thoughts or questions about? Okay. Moving on, we'll move on to the first item of business is which to.
I have a couple ag committee things if I may.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
That's right. We had our most recent ag committee meeting maybe a week or so ago, more recently, and everyone was excited that we passed the ag plan. We were all patting each other on our backs. and then starting to really start to think about what are the steps that we want to take going forward.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that came up was I don't know where it is, but there was a list at some point or conversation from this body, from the board, about some ag things that were interesting or things that people wanted to talk about, like farm friendly town, and there was like a bunch of things that someone had come up with. And I don't remember.
I don't know of anything like that from the board.
Unless it came up from I bet it was in the comprehensive plan, the revised comprehensive
Oh,
plan.
that could be.
Okay.
That rings a bell.
Okay, I'll go back and look at that. That was a question that came up.
Yeah, I bet that's what it is.
Also, some questions about, Don Barb was there, so we talked a little bit about like what's the liaison responsibility, both from me going from this body of conversation to that body and that body back to this body. So that was just a question.
Just a question, or was there a discussion and a determination?
No.
No.
We don't have to talk about it now, but I just want to bring that up, and if there's something official or how does information flow? Is it two directional? Is it?
I see it as bi-directional.
Okay.
I think that's the purpose. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Couple of things. Both the EIC and the ag committee and this body have all been talking about agrivoltaics and how we can get more information about agrivoltaics and whether there should be some kind of informational meeting or anything. There is now one scheduled for the Tompkins County Agriculture and Farmland Protection Board 2025 Tompkins County Agricultural Summit is going to be on March 26th in Groton, New York. Looks like it's a most day event from 9:30 to 3:30. if you want me to forward you, I only have paper copies, but I can probably get a digital copy. Mainly, I think it would be nice to have at least someone either from this body or from the ag committee to go. Because they're gonna talk about solar and agrivoltaics is one of the main things.
Is that on a weekend or something?
No, it's Wednesday. Wait, I'm looking. Wednesday. It's the last Wednesday of
March.
Oh, no, sorry, I have February. Wait a minute.
There'll be
It's Wednesday.
food catered. So food.
Okay, I'll go.
And the other part of the second half of the day is solar and agriculture town role in promoting ag friendly solar. So it's literally what we've been talking about in the various groups. And they're going to have a bunch of different professionals that have been talking and developing and thinking about all this stuff.
Do you know from which agencies? Is it like from NYSERDA?
Extension, law, Pace Law at Pace University, Ithaca Area Development, Tompkins County, Pro Dairy Farm and Corporate Extension, American Farmland Trust. It's so because it's the Farmland Protection Board, it's mostly those folks, but then other folks invited. There's that, and then the last thing, if Dan Klein is still here, I have a question for Dan.
He's there.
Okay. So I don't know how many of your constituents or how often you engage with farmers or land stewards that may be impacted by federal freezes, specifically USDA conservation programs. Dan, if it's not on your radar yet, it might be. I know there's not a ton of agriculture left in the county, but definitely counties surrounding Tompkins County. But just tonight, I've heard that I lost a $45,000 grant because of the freeze at my farm. And so I'm also in extension now. I'm at Cooperative Extension, Tompkins County, and more every day we're hearing stories of farmers who the worst case is they've already spent money in a reimbursable grant from the feds, and now that contract is being broken and they're not getting the reimbursement. And in some cases, this might actually hurt them enough to make them close their operation.
Sure.
It's a big chunk for me, but I am diversified enough where I think I'll be able to do the costs without the federal money, but I was hoping for it. But just to put that on your radar and everyone else's radar, that I think this is it's starting to trickle in, but it's gonna be a flood soon, and people are really gonna be impacted by it, because it's not only is it the farmers directly, but it's the contractors they would have been hiring, the customers that would have gained from whatever services or food products they would have provided, tourism. I mean, it's all impacted. And the other side, which I'm not impacted by, but I know other farmers are, is that the ice raids that have been happening mostly in northern parts of the state on larger dairy farms and other grain farms. And so just want to kind of bring that to people's attention as the ag committee, that it's gonna continue to be impacted, and we're going to hear more about it. One of the more powerful things I'm hearing about is the stories that are coming out. I think are important in that we can't do a lot, but at least the stories provide an opportunity for people to reflect on the impacts that this is having. And so if anyone has stories from people that they know, I'm going to probably tell my story about it, just so people know. But the more you can share the stories and pass them along, I think the better to whoever, decision makers or other community members that might not hear this stuff, they need to hear it. Thanks.
I know you are on the Caroline Ag Committee. Are you connected to the County Ag and Farmland Protection Committee?
I've connected with the committee in the past, but not in my current capacities, no.
I wonder if maybe that would be a body that could try to do some kind of inventorying of what grants are out there and what's under threat. That's what we're doing at the county. We are inventorying all our federal funding. We don't know how to stop it like anybody else, but at least we'll have a handle on what we're talking about. That's just the first thought I had, that would be at least a useful first step.
Thank you.
And I'll be happy to reach out to the Ag and Farmland Protection Board and ask them if they're interested in that project.
Yeah, and also just reminding me that this agricultural summit that I was just talking about with agrivoltaics, one of my colleagues, Crystal Buck, is going to be there, and she's on the farmland protection. She's a farmland protection educator and is on that board. So I think she's been hearing stories as well, and that would be someone to connect with.
Great, I will.
I think it's really important for Josh Riley to hear these stories. So in your case, Jonathan, I'd really contact his office and give him the details, because also this isn't supposed to be happening right now. There's supposed to be a court freeze on this nonsense. So I think it'd be good for him to hear.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, got it. Great. Okay. Thank you, Dan. All right. Any other updates before we move on? So great. Okay. So I will move on to the next item of business, which is to fumbling around here a little bit. Here we go. I will offer a resolution to adopt the amended Caroline tax exemption law. So whereas the Caroline Town Board has duly considered the following amendments to Caroline tax exemptions. 1, increase the 50% seniors disabled persons exemption limit to $36,500 from $35,000. And 2, for the alternative veterans exemption, for veterans honorably discharged, increase the exemption limit from $15,000 to $21,000 for veterans who qualify as having served in combat theater or zone of operation. Increase the exemption limit from $10,000 to $35,000, and for veterans receiving a qualifying compensation rating because of a service-related disability, increasing the exemption limit from $50,000 to $70,000. And 3rd, for Cold War veterans exemption, remove the 10-year limit for qualifying veterans who remain in their homes. And whereas the exemption impact analysis shows a small impact of these exemption changes on the tax base, resolve the Caroline Town Board hereby adopts this amended Caroline tax exemption law. And I will need a second. Second by Tim, and discussion. I know you had some concerns about one of the, so our tax exemption law, just for those listening, is we consolidated all the exemptions into a single law to make it easier for ourselves and for the assessment office to understand what exemptions apply in Caroline.
Yeah, I could just briefly talk about it. I know that we're not going to make any changes tonight. But just maybe for future, I'm doing some research on the green building exemption, RPTL 470. And essentially what this is that it exempts based on the years of the house and percentage of exemption based on what your certified green building. There's a table that they go by. It looks like it's for 10 years. and then it goes to 0 unless you're platinum. I guess it ends there anyway. So what's interesting about it is that I called the assessor's office because I was interested in. It says that they're using LEED green building certification or equivalent. And right now what I'm getting from the county is that it goes on to say that they accept other standards that are equivalent to LEED, and they list a few here. But when I got into it with the assessor, they said the county makes LEED the default. And this is very in the weeds, but LEED is a very stringent and difficult green building certification, which I was involved with many years ago when I used to do these certifications as a energy advisor, mainly in the county of Tompkins County. LEED certified buildings have typically been large institutions like Ithaca College, or large construction companies that have multi-units or multi-family housing, because it makes it cheaper to do it that way. It's pretty expensive if you're doing your own building. Long story short, I'd like the town to consider, if it's true that we need to, says here under B, standards determined by the taxing jurisdiction.
Right.
That we come up with a recommended standard based on a few that they recommend here is probably the best I've learned is the American National Standards Institute. The Green Building Initiatives. No. Where is it? National Green Building Standards approved by the American National Standards Institute. The reason that's important to think about is, one, it's more accessible to kind of medium income green building designs. It's more in line with building code kind of structure and process, or our building code person can follow it and be more engaged with it, rather than LEED is very complex and expensive. And it's also the third thing was, sent out an email to everyone, I don't remember what I said, but there's a third thing where it's just it makes a lot more sense for a single family home versus what LEED typically is for.
Bigger places.
Yeah, more expensive, bigger kind of development. So anyway, I can get clarification from the county about the wording and the determination, but I think it'd be interesting to do that, because right now it's like 0 people are going to do this tax exemption as it currently stands.
So can I read the operative sentence here?
Yeah.
So it says such property must meet the standards established by LEED, comma, the Green Building Initiative's Green Globes rating system, comma, the National Green Building Standards as approved by the American National Standards Institute, comma, or substantially equivalent green building standards determined by the taxing jurisdiction. So that looks like we could apply either LEED or either of those other two, the Green Globes or the ANSI. You know, it's if you thought one of those met what you're looking for a residential property, this would seem to me like, I suppose assessment, if we don't tell them anything, you know, they go by you're saying their default is LEED, but it looks like we would be able to indicate any of those three from this language.
Well, it's something that you're reminding me of, there's a form on the county's website that has to be filled out as part of the process.
By the applicant?
By the applicant.
Yeah.
And I think in there, it's more specific. And I think that's where LEED becomes default.
If they don't indicate anything, or
So
you're saying the form just says LEED?
Yeah. there was something about it where the
Okay.
the county was very specific about us calling it out differently in our law.
Okay,
So anyway, maybe that's just a clarification that needs to happen.
yeah,
So something else we'd need to at least think about, I suppose, would be how the determination would happen. And I assume that would have to be through the code office. And how complicated that would be, or how much of a workload expansion that would be, et cetera.
Right, and the word lead would almost make it impossible for our
Right.
code officer to engage with it. Whereas the National Green Building Standards are more code-like in that it follows our town code officer's process. Whereas the lead process is its own process that's like layered on top of and so I think what we just need to do is to communicate to the county which one we would go with, and just make sure that when we have someone that filing from our town submitting it to Tompkins County, they realize that that's the one that we're.
yeah. So I think, as explained earlier, to get this, to have these exemptions apply for the next tax season, we have to adopt our changes by March 1. So that's why this is kind of moving this month. I wanted to get it done, but this may be something that I think we could let the assessment office know, after adoption of this, we could let them know later that, hey, we looked at it, here's the one we want for our town. So we can ask Jay.
So I have an email in to them. Hopefully I'll know by tomorrow or next week.
Okay, very good.
And the only other thing I mentioned is in my communications with various entities around this thing, because not a lot of people know about this law. The engineers don't do this work, and the building raters don't know.
Oh, the green building.
The green building people, they're like, wow, I didn't even know this existed. So that was interesting educational for them. But then they were saying, one of the guys up in Syracuse, I don't remember his name, at one of the firms that does these ratings, like the lead ratings, is been working with the city of Ithaca on their green building code system. And he was like, well, would Caroline be interested in doing a green building code for the town? I'll just throw that out there. I told him why that might not be a good idea right at the moment, or if it would even make sense for our small town, but it was an interesting question.
Well, we have considered in the past, what is it called? There's an enhanced code that you can do through New York State, and that was like 4 or 5 years ago, and the code officer at that time felt like it wouldn't be productive because that if we applied the code as it is rigorously, that that we would be in a much better place. So I think he felt like it was a stretch.
Rather than adding another layer, just doing the one we have.
And increasing expenses and things like that. So I don't know, I'm open to discussion on it.
I mean, I do know that our current code officer is very committed to assisting clients to work in this direction. So I think we have a good chance of having our current law applied appropriately, which sometimes in the past wasn't clear.
Great. Stretch code.
Stretch code,
yeah. So. Good, well, I'm definitely interested in learning about that, even if we don't proceed with it, but maybe we would, so. Good, okay. Very good, so, any further discussion?
Nope.
No friendly amendments at this point. We're gonna, call for a vote on the, revised law as is, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed, that's unanimous, thank you. The next resolution is related to the presentation we had on Thomas Road safety at our last meeting. So I'll offer this resolution to request a speed limit study for Thomas Road in the town of Caroline. Whereas the Caroline Town Board has received a petition from residents at 15 properties along Thomas Road requesting measures to address high traffic speeds on this town road. And whereas Thomas Road is bordered by residents, this is a bed and breakfast, a farm, and is often walked by residents and used by bicyclists as well. And whereas Tompkins County Sheriff Derek Osborne has provided a letter of support for a speed study, recognizing that Thomas Road is now used as a thoroughfare between Ellis Hollow Road and New York State Route 79, therefore be it resolved. The Caroline Town Board hereby requests that the Tompkins County Highway Superintendent forward this resolution and TE9A form to the New York State Department of Transportation to request a speed study on Thomas Road to lower the speed limit to 40 miles per hour on this and comparable town of Caroline roads. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Tim. And you will notice that I added I didn't know if we needed to if we just left it open to the state to say what the speed limit should be, if we should put a number in there. But
I
from what
was wondering about that. I mean, 40 miles is what Lounsbury is, with better sight lines. I mean, I would say at the maximum 40 miles if we're going to put a number in. Because I mean, Beesmer Road from 79, down to Brooktondale Road is what, 35? So
45?
35.
Okay.
So I'm just saying that I would say the maximum would be 40 miles an hour.
Can I make a friendly amendment?
So can I just finish?
Yeah.
Like I just
It's related.
I did, so I went to this presentation and on speed limits, and that's where I learned that you should make a recommendation. And he also, I asked him to, he was basically saying that you could, what I got out of it is that you could extrapolate your recommendation for one road to other roads of a similar nature in your town. So that's why I added that language, that last clause. I don't know.
Sorry, I have to leave for a second. Sorry, I'll be back.
Okay.
I'm stuck in my car.
Well, yeah, I just would go down because Lounsbury Road has better sight lines. It's got a shoulder.
Hey, Kate, Tim wanted to offer something. Do you?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to recommend just a very brief additional whereas. Whereas the speed limit for Lounsbury Road was recently lowered to 40 miles per hour. And this is what would we call it? It's basically the same road. It's the connection to Thomas Road. That's something along those lines, just to add that in for the state to see this.
And not an
Contiguous.
extension, but yeah,
Right.
I know. Yeah,
So-
okay.
Lounsbury Road is a major rural collector. But I don't think Thomas Road is, but that might be, if it is still a major rural collector, you might say that it's a continuation of a major rural collector. But I don't know if it is or not. Thomas Road. I can't remember right off.
It's whatever you want to call it, like a geographic. If you cross the street, you go from one to the other.
It's right
So,
across the street.
yeah.
It's continuation.
to me, 40 miles per hour feels about right. And one of the points made in this presentation is that it's a balance, as you are well aware, between safety, because the safest speed would be 1 mile an hour. So it's a balance between safety and reasonable transport and what the public will accept. Because, and also what was acknowledged, as has been acknowledged here, is that enforcement is important, but a very big issue because it's difficult to enforce all over the place. So,
Yeah. I hear you. I just worry that if we say 40, they'll go to 45 or 50. Whereas if we say 35, they might say, oh, well, maybe 40.
Well, I mean, it is true that it's posted 45
at the
in the
other
Dryden
end,
line.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, we're asking for that to be lowered. And in the very worst case scenario, a continuation of that. Because we don't know right now still whether it's should be 45 or 55 in the Caroline portion.
What it is right now, right? That's the problem, is we don't
yeah,
we don't
well,
know if there's a speed limit or what it is, if there is one.
Would the state change it to 40 if the town line then is 45? Will they do that? Will they cut the road in half and have one be 40, one be 45?
I think they, honestly, I would think they would do the whole road regardless of township the same.
But they didn't do that on Coddington Road.
That's true.
So
I
they even cut
retract
up.
that statement.
They
I
even cut
totally
that up
retract
in the
that
town
statement.
portion, so.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
they'll
Do we
do
need to get
one.
Dryden? Can we get a letter of support from Dryden as well? Would that make any difference, do you think?
I would like to submit this like tomorrow.
Right,
That would take,
I could delay it another 6 months.
I could send what we're doing to Dryden as an FYI. That's probably
Yeah.
a wise thing to do.
Could we
Yeah.
CC Dryden in on it? I think that would be good.
So we could, and I don't know, I'll see what you guys think about this. I could change the language to say lowered to 35 to 40 miles per hour. Since we're not the experts, but we leave it to them, but then we leave in more latitude. Or is it better to just stick with the 40? I don't know.
Well, what are the roads with 35 that are similar?
Well, I
Buffalo
can think of
Road,
Beesmar right off. Brooktondale Road is 35, Valley Road through Brooktondale. My back street is 30. I think these, Speedsville, what's out in Speedsville, Mark?
probably 35 in the village, in the hamlet.
Mhm.
I can't even remember if it's,
Yeah, it seems like you
Maybe
could put
Jesse knows.
35, but they're probably not gonna do it.
Right.
35 is right in on 79 in Slaterville, goes down to 35 for a little bit, right? And then goes back up to 45.
Yeah, those are major hubs.
Yeah, it's a major road. The
Beesmar
Beesmar
got,
Road, I think, is the one I'm thinking of with a lot of houses, and I'm not sure how they got a 35 there. It's been low for a long time. I'll check. Maybe I missed it, but
Yeah,
we could send it out. I mean, I think it's more important to get something sent out. The request to get sent out than to
Happened because the highway study happened when the bridge was out and everybody was using Beesmer as a shortcut instead of going all the way around the town. So kind of a false indicator. Remember that year-long period when it was just a highway? But anyway, I don't know. I mean,
I'm
we have nothing
comfortable.
to lose if you put 35 to 40, other than
No downside, right?
I don't think
Yeah.
so.
Okay. I will do that. So that's a change. And then your whereas, an additional whereas. Okay, the speed limit for Lounsbury for not contiguous, but continuous for Lounsbury Road, which is continuous
Yeah.
with Thomas Road,
Yeah.
was recently lowered to 30 to 40 miles per
4
hour.
miles per hour.
Yeah. Okay. Lounsbury Road, which is continuous with Thomas Road, was recently lowered to 40 miles per hour. Okay. So the additional whereas is whereas the speed limit for Lounsbury Road, which is continuous with Thomas Road, was recently lowered to 40 miles per hour. Resolved, the Caroline Town Board hereby requests blah, 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 lower the speed limit on Thomas Road to 34, 35 to 40 miles per hour. Does that undermine that language to say that? But, right?
Yeah,
It's more consistent if we stick with 40.
it is. It is.
I sort of feel
Let's
like we
just do
should do
that.
that.
I agree.
Okay,
I
okay.
agree.
Is that okay, Kate?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you. So we won't make that change to the resolved in order to make it consistent with the whereas that Tim added, so. Any other thoughts about that resolution?
No.
Michelle's still gone, but we do have a quorum and
Yeah,
I'll call for a vote,
yeah.
so. Michelle is absent. I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you. All right. Double check my agenda.
When you ask, if you're opposed, are you supposed to say aye? Cause you're asking a question. Yes, I'm opposed, or do you say nay?
Oh,
If I say no, I'm not opposed, I would say
I think you
nay.
could say aye to that. Yeah, that's a good point. So the next resolution I will offer is offer a resolution authorizing a contract with Vantage Point for engineering and project management for the Caroline Municipal Broadband Project. Resolve, the Caroline Town Board hereby authorizes the supervisor to execute an agreement with Vantage Point for engineering and construction of the Connect All MIT project for Caroline Municipal Broadband, not to exceed 470,737, which is the number on their proposal. I will say with adjustments in the language of the agreement as needed, because it was reviewed by Guy today and we may make some revisions, but I'm not offering that language here. I'm just seeking authorization to sign the agreement. It has been reviewed by Guy and that input has been provided to the team.
Can I ask a question? Or do
You
we want-
may, of course.
No,
Did I?
Do you need a second first?
I need a second before we have
I'll
discussion.
second that.
Seconded by Kate, thank you.
I briefly saw this in the email. Is this like a contentious issue? Was there a problem and that's why we're changing contractors, or they're done and now we're going with a different contract?
No, so it was a change of course in the engineering firm. So, yeah, so the Dryden team who has worked with Hunt, came to the conclusion that that the capacity was limited for the short term that we need to get this project done. And so that was one step, and then they learned of this other firm that this Vantage Point is based in North Dakota, but they have presence all over the place, including New York State. They were vetted by Dave Makar, the executive director, and interviewed several times. I attended a couple of those. So, and they were confident in their capacity for this. So that really was the key driver.
Does it add expense? Like, do we lose?
Not really.
Okay.
Their proposal was less than Hunt's, so for engineering services, yeah.
And we're assuming that the pole permissions we've already paid for are just going to be transferred. But those are extant,
Oh, yeah,
so we won't lose those funds.
so it's
New York Connect
Great
All
question.
office. So I was at a meeting on Tuesday, and they're aware of this and working, with Dryden and Caroline and Dryden Fiber on this shift over from Hunt. So
Seems like stuff like this with these kinds of projects is probably common.
perhaps. So you were able to attend on Tuesday, Kate, right? You said?
yes, yeah, I attended. We're waiting for reports from Hunt. Hunt did not attend. And to get everything, in line this coming Tuesday, we expect the new firm. Oh, I'm blank on their name. You just said it. Starts with a V, right? What's the name of the firm we're going with? That Dryden's going with?
Vantage.
So Vantage will be at the meeting this coming Tuesday, and will be
Okay,
taking over and checking all the data points, like what's been okayed and what hasn't, what's been on hold, from Hunt, and getting the information from them. So
great. That's great.
mhm.
Yeah. But your questions was quite appropriate, so thank you. I sometimes forget what I told people when I haven't. So.
And I'm still catching up. I mean, I wasn't here when you guys started all this, so I'm
Right.
still trying to figure out the details.
And I wasn't here, or we weren't here when Dryden started it, so
Right.
it's like, so real. I do consider this, I think we're really lucky to be working with Dryden to expand this in Caroline, so. Great, any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, I will.
Well, I could also add that Vanguard has talked about not only being able to complete Caroline within the time that we need it to be done, but also connect the parts of Dryden that Hunt was going to wait on. They think they can get everything done within the timeline. I had a couple people here on Brooktondale Road who lived in Dryden. I'm happy that they would not be hooked up for a number of years. We're not part of
Yep.
the Connect All grant. So hopefully those little areas will also be filled in, but that's to come, dates and times and stuff. So
No, yeah, that was my understanding too, that so that's great, thank you. All right, without further ado, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye, or raise your hand. Aye.
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 And opposed? Hearing none, that's unanimous, carries, thank you. Great, let's see, so. Let's see. So with that, I will offer a, let me think, okay, so let's see. I left some things off my agenda here. Okay, so do people have comments on the minutes of February 5th?
Look good.
Minutes are hereby approved and offer resolution to pay the town bills in the amounts of A fund $359,228.79, DA fund $82,661.80, and streetlight fund $382.82. Anybody want to second that so we can pay the bills? Michelle seconded it. Great. Any questions or discussion?
No.
Trying to think, there was a $48,000 bill from Cargill for salt in the vouchers, so we did get a bunch of salt.
That was the chunk that's gonna collapse the
Yeah,
mine and ruin the lake, that one chunk.
Great, and also I'll mention, Kate, I pulled out you had a reimbursement resolution in there, and I think, so I pulled that out because you're gonna be getting that back from cancellations for the meeting, I think, so. You're muted.
Okay, that makes sense. I'll talk to you about figuring out how to get reimbursed for that.
Yeah, we can modify it as appropriate. Yeah. Okay,
Okay.
great. So all in favor of paying the town bills, say aye.
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 Opposed? That passes unanimously. Great. Tim.
So not on the agenda is cannabis.
Hmm.
So where does that stand?
I didn't put it on the agenda intentionally because I was letting things percolate. And good. I opened it up for, let's add it to tonight's discussion right now. And I'm interested in your thoughts.
Is percolate some kind of cannabis metaphor?
Is it?
I don't know.
Oh,
it seems like it should be.
Okay.
No, I'm just, since it wasn't there and we had a public hearing, I think we
Yeah.
should commit ourselves to
I
at
do
least
too,
addressing
and we
the issue.
shouldn't, it shouldn't, but I felt like there has been discussion about the issue, and honestly, yeah, so.
I mean, we could easily leave it for the next meeting, but I think it should be on the agenda at least to the next meeting.
Or the March business meeting, one of the two. Either one. Yeah, this is, the
I'd
next
like
one's-
to have more discussion and I'd like a little more time to read. I've been pretty low energy. I'm sorry about that, but I haven't read everything that's come out, so.
So, Kate, so we're not gonna vote on it tonight. I believe our first meeting in March is March 5th. And then the second meeting would be, of course, 2 weeks after that. Do you have a thought about that? Like I think one of those meetings we should we should do something. We should bring it forward and make a decision.
You want to discuss tonight and then decision later, or have the next meeting be the
I was-
discussion and then?
I was, either way.
Okay.
Well,
I mean, it sounds like people aren't prepared to have a discussion tonight, but I'd just like to make it, I don't want us to lose sight
yeah,
of
to
this.
put it on.
I mean, I have
Right.
one point, which we had kind of gone back and forth
Mhm.
at one point is, to me, and maybe I'm wrong, the biggest sticking point is that it's not federally regulated yet. And so I don't think if are we, is it a moratorium? What's the term? It's just not, haven't made it a law yet, or what is the thing that it is currently?
It's not a moratorium. We opted out
Opted out.
at the
Okay.
last moment. We could, and so that's the way it is in Caroline.
So you can't opt out of selling alcohol in a town because it's a federally regulated
Thing, so
economic business. It's a business that's regulated by the federal government.
I don't know, there are dry counties in the South.
I think it's a state issue.
Okay,
there
But-
are dry towns in New York.
Yeah.
I believe there still are.
I think you're right.
I think so. I'm just saying, I'm not advocating.
How is that possible? Because isn't there laws around you can't restrict business? And selling of alcohol it's a business. Like, I don't see how that's possible. Anyway, the point I was trying to make was at some point we would probably bump up against the federal guidelines around restricting a business there's a term, trade and
Opportunity or something.
marketing, you know what I mean? Like the whole business of economic systems, you can't limit business. Right?
Well, we have a fracking ban.
In the state,
In the town,
but in the state, I mean, the state is
but the
not
towns,
allowing
the
it.
towns
Well, the town
proceeded,
had it first.
town had it first.
there are some dry towns in New York State.
What did you say, Kate? There what? There are dry towns?
There are 7 dry towns in New York State.
Okay,
So what I get confused
Well,
about is why can't you say no to a business? You can't say no to a business like Dollar General.
that is,
The company,
yeah, that's it's
Okay.
one of many, and so that would be weird.
Small, medium size retail establishments. I mean, you can't, right? In zoning or law, you can't say you can't have a little box store.
well, you could, sure,
You could.
sure,
What you can't say in zoning is you can't have a Dollar General.
or a McDonald's.
Yeah.
Or you can't
So you
target.
can say you
particular
can't have
company.
fast food restaurants?
Yep,
You can say that?
Yep.
Really?
So Michelle has her hand up. I want to
Have her
call
hand
her.
up. I looked up about the restricting alcohol, and it says, although New York State cannot decide on dry counties, individual cities and towns have the authority to become dry. This can be done by prohibiting on or off premises alcohol sales or by banning specific types of alcohol such as beer, wine, or spirits. So,
But is there a regulation similar in regards to cannabis?
opt in and opt out,
I mean, we're there.
we're there.
Um,
All right. I'm getting the territory.
I mean, I mean, I think what you're asking about are these different distinctions. But one of the distinctions that authorized, for example, the fracking ban in the towns of Dryden and Caroline was home rule, which provides the town with
Yeah, I
the
know what it
authority
is.
to supersede the state.
Right.
And that actually won in court. So but that's not what we're talking about here.
Mhm.
Now we're just either opting in or opting out of the state regulations regarding cannabis.
For two enterprises related to cannabis.
Right.
Oh, because people were asking for permits or something? Particular businesses?
Why are we
No,
considering opting in?
you said two something.
Oh, no, so for places of
Oh,
consumption
okay.
and dispensaries.
Dispensaries.
So those are the two things that we opted out of, and those were the only things you could opt out of. Until, and are definitely, I think Tim will remember this. I can't remember how many of you were in those discussions, but basically the board, I mean, we were gonna not opt out. And then at the last moment, we thought, well, we probably should, because the regulations haven't been finalized, just out of a sense of responsibility. So there was really there really wasn't any kind of an objection to these two things. So yeah, anyway.
We just weren't satisfied that the legal parameters had yet to be ironed out.
Yeah.
Because they were doing it in such a rush.
Right, so if you would say opt in and then they were terrible regulations, then
Right.
you're opted in.
Yeah. That's basically was our thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the end of 21 and it was like, okay, you can do it now, but in January, that's it. You can't. So we were like, okay, we'll do it. So.
And it's up to us as a body to decide. It's not like you can leave it up to the voters or something, or a
Well,
referendum, or I don't
we
know.
could do that if we wanted to. I don't want to. I think we should decide. And I don't have, I mean, I understand, I guess I'm a little bit like Kate, that I want to read more about this and think more about it, but yeah.
Can we put it on for, have a discussion the next meeting then?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's what we should do. I think we should discuss it next meeting. So, very good. Let's do that.
And I had one other question, which might be really premature because people probably haven't read their email. But we got an email this afternoon with an estimate from Ace Security.
Oh, I forwarded that.
Yeah.
I was wondering about that. I did read that. Thank you for bringing that up, Tim.
So can you just remind us of the context of this?
Basically, Bob was interested in getting security cameras, which they need at the highway department. So he had Ace come out and they walked through and, came up, I think he said, you have the proposal in front of you, so you might tell me, but I think it's for 10 cameras. It's more elaborate than at the town hall, just because they would want to know if somebody was out back and tried to break in or whatever. I think that was his thinking, and they have a couple cameras inside. So that's pretty much it, and that's the proposal that Ace provided. I don't know if you have any other information, Jesse, about from discussions with Bob, but that's what I understood. It wasn't really anything more complicated than that.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. Just the estimate came by email and I sent him a copy of it and I didn't know anything about it until I got an email about it, so.
Hmm.
So
I did ask him, Kate, I did ask him today. I said, my only thought is that whether there's like $7,000 in labor to put it in, and so I wouldn't want to have to do this again. So he did say, you know, that they discussed putting in the infrastructure so that it would be compatible with the modifications for the highway barns.
Is there a need for this many security cameras? Can we use an alarm system instead? The price is high. Have there been attempted break-ins? Have things been stolen?
Not recently, I don't think. Yeah.
I mean, I remembered that this came up in passing, and I had just thought that what we were probably talking about were a couple pole cameras outside, just as a deterrence. But this is pretty extensive,
Seems like it, yeah, I don't know.
so I don't know.
One thing I did do is I went back and looked at the cost of the cameras that were installed at the town hall property. So there's 3 cameras, and that was $7,500 for that. So the wiring and purchase of 10 cameras in different locations, I thought, you know, for 16,000, I didn't think that was, in my opinion, was that unreasonable. But of course, that doesn't mean anything.
I just wonder if we need cameras everywhere. I mean, and
Yeah.
So
whether
the question I'm hearing is, okay. You're wondering whether the number of cameras could be scaled back, or?
well, yes, and I was also just wondering, I mean, have there been break-ins? Is it just everybody's getting cameras, so we need cameras? Is there an insurance requirement that we get cameras?
No.
I'm just wondering about the push for the cameras.
I
Well,
have
this is-
those same questions.
I mean, this did up. This did come up at a previous meeting with Bobby, I remember pretty distinctly. And we said, yeah, why don't you just look into it? You know, see what's involved. I think we're probably all just a little bit startled by the magnitude of this. But that would be all, but we certainly, see it now, I can't remember how far back it was. So maybe only Mark and I were at that meeting, I just don't remember.
No, I think I remember something about it. I was just taken aback at 10 cameras with $16,000
And me too.
tag and thinking, why are we doing this again? And I was wondering, have there been break-ins? Have there been attempted break-ins that I don't know about?
So back in the day, not during Bobby's tenure, but there was a time when fuel was being stolen. So that's the one incident that I know of. Other than that, I don't know if tools have been taken or not. I'm not aware of any like forced entries or anything off hours, but that doesn't mean it hasn't happened, and so yeah.
I mean, we do have security cameras in our town buildings, and we determined that was a prudent thing to do, so I don't have any problems with having security cameras with the town barns. I was just surprised by the extent of it, that's all.
Yeah. So
that might be a conversation we can have
with Bob, right?
with Bob.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, I guess, yeah, so. Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. I sent it out today and then didn't have it written down. Is there anything else that we should?
Oh, I have I'm just curious. I mean, it's kind of what you've just said, but I'd like to know what the justification is for the cameras at each spot. You know, like what is it that they're
Okay,
supposed to be doing? You know, yeah, and who's monitoring the cameras? Who
well,
would,
the cameras would be, it would be like the ones in the clerk's office. So
Yeah.
there would be a monitor in Bob's office, so I guess it would be him or whoever happens to be in the office, whether it's Bill or anybody else.
what about off hours?
Well, I think it would be recorded. There's a recording capacity. I can't remember is it a week, Jesse? I don't remember what it is, but
Yeah, I think it's more than that. I think it's something like 16 days or something.
I mean, it just seems like it would be easy for somebody to still break in and be filmed, but you know, you wouldn't be able to tell who they were. They could cover up their license plate or whatever.
sure.
I don't see how it's necessarily going to prevent,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess I would need to know more like why the cameras are in which position, you know, what they're trying to protect.
Yep.
I mean,
Why they need 10? And I'm guessing they're all outside cameras, not inside cameras, but maybe some are inside. I don't know.
No, he said a couple were inside.
Okay.
I don't know if it was 2 or more or less, but
Like
he
one.
said a couple were inside.
well, that to me begs the question that the motivation around theft is one thing, but then there's the other side of filming workers.
That is yeah.
That's a question. I mean,
That's a
for
very
that
good
many
question.
cameras, and you're
Yeah.
saying some are inside, I wonder if there's concern about people standing around or doing things they shouldn't be doing on the job, or it's like a control issue rather than a safety issue.
I don't think so.
No.
But when you mentioned that, it made me wonder about
Sorry, I don't necessarily think they're there to be monitoring like the break room or anything like that. My understanding was it was for inside of outbuildings. So like where equipment is stored and inventory is kept, things like that.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Great, thanks, Jesse. Yeah,
Thanks, I didn't mean to take us down a rabbit hole, I just.
no, it's good that we can discuss it and get back to Bob.
We are the fiduciary entity, right?
Yep.
I have another question.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Sorry, I'm sorry I had to go to get my car pulled out of my driveway.
You get it out?
Yeah, they got it. He had to tow it out. Do you believe that? Anyway, what was the ultimate thing on the speed limit for Thomas? Did Bobby find out what that speed limit is? Is there a speed limit? Or?
I forgot to ask him that today. I sent him an email. I think I copied you guys.
Yeah, I saw the email. So he didn't respond yet. So we don't know what the current.
We'll know soon. I'll find out tomorrow or whatever, but yeah, it'd be nice to know that.
We passed the resolution, Michelle.
Okay, great. I'm in favor. So
Great. Thank you.
post vote. Anyway.
Post vote. Yeah, we stuck with 40 miles an hour as the recommendation based on it being a continuation of Lounsbury Road. So.
Okay, yeah, sorry I had to leave suddenly.
Understandable. Great. Anything else for tonight?
Let's see if we can get home.
Okay, sounds good. Okay.
There's a lot of snow up here. I was gonna say.
I was just shocked when I stayed in the town hall all day and I stepped out to come over and set up for the meeting. It's like, holy cow.
Yeah, we were supposed to get like 1 inch. And I think we've got 5 inches outside. What
Yeah.
about you, Michelle, up in the hills? How much do you have?
I probably have 4 or 5 inches. That's the thing. Usually, you know, he's really good about plowing my driveway. And I can usually, you know, even if there was some snow, I can get out, but I went too far over and I went into kind of a ditch and he had to hook up a chain to pull me out.
Wow.
So,
Well, I'm glad you're out.
yeah. I've
All
got
right.
some stuff tomorrow.
I will offer a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second it.
Kate seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion, any opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jesse.
Yeah,
Thanks, everybody.
yeah, thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jesse. Hey, good night, Dan. Thank you.
Good night.